So welcome everyone to the Connected Learning pre-conference, Transforming Teen Services. Hopefully we'll have more people drop in along the way, but we appreciate you being here. We've got Adrian Butler, who I guess you want to, introduce yourself. Yeah, Adrian
Sure.
Butler and Leah Wayand to take us on this journey through connected learning. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the controls over to Leah and let you guys get started.
Okay, I'm going to start first. This is my name is Adrian Butler, and I'm a youth services consultant at the Department of Libraries. And I thought we'd take a few minutes and go around and have everybody introduce themselves, and just kind of say where you work and what your position there at the library is. And then if you want to mention what your current form of self-care, you can see mine is right well watching Hamilton on repeat on Disney Plus, but I'm also doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe in chronological order and reading cookbooks, but not actually cooking, but just reading the cookbooks. Leah?
Look, actually cooking takes a lot of work. It's a lot more fun to just look at the pictures. Plus, there's interesting essays sometimes and asides. I am Leah Weyand. I'm the Teen Services Coordinator for Tulsa City County Library System. And along with Adrian, I'm doing the Transforming Teen Services project through YALSA's Train the Trainer cohort. So my self-care right now is probably I'm reading a lot of tween graphic novels. You know, there's like a good level of drama. It's not too upsetting. Some of the YA ones get a little upsetting. So like my emotional bandwidth right now is at the tween graphic novel level. So how about Jennifer, do you want to tell us your name, your librarian position, and your current form of self-care?
Okay. So I'm Jennifer. I am the branch manager at Parker Memorial Library in Sulphur, which is a branch of the Southern Oklahoma Library System. And let's see, self-care. I go on long walks with my dog. And yeah, I'd say I've watched Hamilton a couple of times now too. So yeah.
One of us. Thanks, Jennifer. Leslie, do you want to chime in with what your position is in your library and what your current form of self-care is? And you can type it in the chat if you want. TBH, I do have to confess I haven't downloaded Disney Plus yet, but like I am obsessed with Hamilton. I feel like a little too excited about watching it on Disney Plus, so I don't know.
Did you see it live?
Yeah, I did get the opportunity, yeah. So Leslie is the assistant director in Claremore, and you do programming. Awesome. No self-care, really? Oh, Leslie, you gotta. Come on. Can I recommend the Adrian's favorite musical authored by Lynn McLaughlin? Michelle, do you want to chime in with your library and position and what your self-care is?
Sure. I work at the Bartlesville Public Library. I'm the director. For self-care, I like to listen to audiobooks, and I paint signs and other things.
That's awesome. I love that. Adrian's daughter is a really accomplished artist. I think everyone who's able to just paint like that, it's amazing. I am hopeless with colors, so I just stand in awe of everyone.
Yes, my form of supporting her is buying her the actual things that she needs, the materials, but I can't actually afford the art that she creates.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the correct position to be in, though, because then you can just ask for gifts, you know. Got Christmas on lock forever. Okay, guys, so we're going to go through some agreements for this session. This is kind of our agenda, and we'll revisit this slide as we go through the presentation so that we can kind of keep up with where we're at. So our meeting agreements, and we invite everyone to add more agreements if you have any that present themselves to you. But our agreements that we want to kind of hold to during these 3 hours together this afternoon, we want to be present. So we want to really be tuned in to what we're talking about and ready to contribute to the discussion. Also, we want to have one mic at a time. That's kind of a little more difficult in the virtual setting sometimes, right? Because we don't see kind of those cues of, oh, someone's about to speak, whatever. But we're going to try not to talk over each other and try to kind of have one mic at a time so we can hear the fullness of everyone's contributions. We're also going to step up, speak, and step back. And that just means that if any one of us is kind of speaking a lot for a minute, maybe pause a beat and invite your co-contributor and co-participant to speak as well so that we can make sure to hear everyone's voice. Definitely, this one will come up a little bit, lean into discomfort. So if something kind of feels a little, like maybe a thought or an idea is coming up that kind of is challenging you, let's lean into that and really think about why it's challenging us and how we can examine what that means for team services and how we're working through that. But we also want to be respectful of everyone. So the phrase sometimes that we use in teen services or with the teens themselves is "don't yuck my yum" and all of that. So there's definitely on that level of if someone else really enjoys it or it really works for them, we can respect that that works for them even if it doesn't work for us. But it also goes into a larger framework of just being respectful about everyone's contributions to the group. And then all of those sounded really serious. So we want to remind everyone that also just have fun and just talk about whatever you're thinking about with these teen services concepts and really, be lighthearted about it. Because if we're not having fun, the teens know it and they don't want to have fun with us either. So it's very, it serves our goal to have fun, which is one of the best things about doing youth services work. I mean, where else can you play with pipe cleaners and cake in a mug and, robots and everything? And you're like, this is my job. Yes, I'm wielding a hot glue gun for work. So if anybody has any session agreements that they would want to add in or any questions about any of those session agreements, you can unmute and speak up, or you can toss it in the chat and we can talk through that. But if you don't really have any more agreements that you want to make or any questions about the agreements, can you just type that yes or I agree in the chat or anything like that so that we know we're all on the same page with these session agreements. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is a little activity kind of called Strolling Through the Years. And what's going to happen with this activity, it's the kind of the portion where we're thinking about ages and stages. And we are going to kind of meditate on a few different questions about ourselves when we were a sixth grader or when we were, in middle school, junior high, whatever. And then we're going to talk a little bit with those same questions about when we were an 11th grader or in high school. So out of these questions, just choose, 2 or 3 questions for when you're in 6th grade. And you can, open up a Word document or a Google Doc if you're on your computer and you want to type it out, or grab a piece of paper and write it out, or just kind of hold it in your mind. But pick 2 or 3 of these questions and think about, what did that mean for you as a 6th grader? What did you think about your parents when you were in 6th grade? Who were your friends in 6th grade? How did you feel about school? How did you like your teachers? What was your favorite thing to do after school? What did you think about other kids in a romantic way, or did you think about them at all? And what did you dream about? And this is you as a sixth grader. So try to choose like 3 of these questions and write down your answers, maybe just a couple sentences for each or some bullet points, whatever kind of helps you really think about yourself there. So I'm going to start a timer for 3 minutes, and then we are going to kind of share some of our answers about this. And Adrian and I will share too. So that is the calculator app, not the timer app. Why do they put them so close together? Okay, so you have 3 minutes. Go. So our timer has finished. So we've spent 3 minutes kind of writing down a little bit about what did we feel like in 6th grade, our 6th grade self, to try to kind of think about where everyone's at in 6th grade. So I'll go ahead and go first and talk about 3 things that I wrote down. And then Adrian, do you want to talk about yours after that? And then we can go through everyone?
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay, so or do you think it would be better to go through question by question and see if anybody answered them?
Oh, no, I think just person by person.
Okay. Yeah, we have a small group for sure too. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, for me, I first thought about how did I like my teachers in 6th grade. For me, this was the first year that classes rotated, so it was odd to start comparing teachers to each other in the same year. There were a lot of different personalities and different ways that they wanted things done, and that was a little bit difficult for me to start kind of figuring out how to please a lot of different people, at the same time. As for what I liked to do after school, very on brand. I just liked to go home and read. I would make sure that my brother and sister got off the bus okay. And then I would just sit in the room I shared with my sister and just read. I would reread everything that I had already read because I didn't have new books yet because I had already read The Hall from the library that week. And then thinking about my parents, when I was in 6th grade, they were really stressed out and tired all the time. I kind of felt ignored by them. I felt like, as the oldest kid, I was kind of taking care of the younger siblings and just kind of, I wasn't a problem, so I didn't really need attention. So that's kind of what my answers were for feeling about where I was at in 6th grade about some of these questions. So Adrian, do you want to share kind of what you were thinking about yourself in 6th grade?
Sure. Okay, so 6th grade, the questions and answers were how did I feel about school? And that was the time period where I started at one school at the beginning of the school year, and then halfway through changed schools. We moved off base because we were living on Tinker Air Force Base, and we moved off base to an apartment. And so I felt really out of place and a little bit lost, and it just was not, I don't think that was a very good year for me now that I think about it. And then my favorite thing to do after school was, at that time I was taking ballet classes and tap classes and jazz classes. So I was really busy after school, Monday through Friday, because ballet was Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and anyway, you don't need a schedule, but anyway, so my afternoons were busy, and then believe it or not, I'm old enough to remember getting the TV guide in the mail. So I usually on the weekends or whenever we got it in, I would know what TV shows I was watching, and I pretty much had the TV programming schedule memorized, but at that time it was just the 3 major channels as opposed to now. And so I did a lot of TV watching, and I didn't really dream about a lot of stuff. I think I was just kind of going through the motions at that time, just trying to figure out why moving and stuff and not having any friends at that time. So it was just kind of just me and my brother. Okay, so I will turn this over to Jennifer if you want to go next.
Okay, yeah, sixth grade. Let's see. I thought about how I felt about school. I was a pretty geeky kid, so I really liked school. And then when it came to my friends, well, I was just friends with other nerdy kids. We were the ones who volunteered at the in the school library and shelved books. And then and then I thought about what I dreamed about, really just growing up. Because middle school, I felt pretty awkward. So just being an adult, getting to the idea of being in charge, and being somewhere probably other than my small town that I grew up in. So, yeah.
Okay, and Latasha, do you want to go next?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys? Oh, okay. So in sixth grade, I was living in New York, and uh, I liked school. Does it have to be from sixth grade, or can it be high school?
We're going to do high school next. So we're kind of thinking about that. It doesn't have to be sixth grade in particular, but we are wanting that junior high, just kind of becoming a teen type of phase of our life.
I liked school, but it was really awkward. As my friends were just the people who went to school, and we were readers, but not necessarily because we saw ourselves as nerds. It's just in New York, that's usually what kids do to avoid strangers talking to them. We would read on the bus or read on the subway. It was you know what I mean? It was just a lifestyle thing. I don't know. I didn't overthink it. As far as my grandparents were raising me, and so I just felt I wish my parents were around more. My dad lived in Brooklyn, and I just stayed in Queens, but my mom was in the military, so my mom actually lived out here in Oklahoma. My teachers, I like the teachers that had us do real life projects. I was not necessarily a fan of the teachers that just gave you a bunch of worksheets and paperwork, or it's just this is just upgraded sub. You could always tell the difference. My favorite thing to do after school, sixth grade, I was in love with Bill Nye the Science Guy and the Wishbone that told the little story, the little dog. So I mean, I would do that most of the time and just talk to friends on the phone. As far as what I thought about boys and girls, we were just kind of figuring it out, and then growing up in the city, there were so many influences from grown-ups and older teenagers, and so we had been exposed to things, and I guess we had tried some things, but we didn't really know what we were doing, and we couldn't really see the big picture. Then it was a really awkward time, and back then I just used to dream about I think at that point I was fantasizing about my parents getting back together. Hello?
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's also shout out to Wishbone for sure. Like that's good stuff. Let's see. Leslie, do you want to share kind of what your answers were for feeling about some of these questions for 6th grade or junior high? So in 6th grade, you liked school and tried really hard, felt some pressure, for sure. You're boy crazy, but it only took the form of discussing them forever with your friends. Yeah, that's definitely kind of like what Latasha was saying. Like, you don't even necessarily like know some stuff that is going through. I like my teachers so much and wanted their approval. Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, do you want to share kind of what your answers are for that 6th grade feeling?
Sure. I really liked 6th grade. I felt challenged, and I got in my worst trouble in my whole school life in 6th grade. My students and I decided, or the classroom and I decided to have a snowball fight in the room, and got my first paddling in 6th grade, and my only one. I liked my teachers and I respected them, and they really assisted me in my theory of lifelong learning and enjoying learning. My favorite thing to do after school at that point was watching TV instead of doing my homework.
That makes sense for sure. That is absolutely, I think, a feeling that a lot of 6th graders share. So I really appreciate you guys all sharing about that, like kind of that junior high stage of your life and those feelings. Now we want to do the same thing with yourself as a high schooler. Can you go through here and kind of choose a few of these questions and kind of either make a few bullet points about your answers or write them down, and we'll share in a moment. And we're going to kind of meditate on that and think of our answers to a few of these questions for us in 11th grade or like high school age. So our 3 minutes start now. Okay, so our timer dinged. So we are now ready to kind of come back together and share our answers to some questions about how we felt as 11th graders. So Adrienne, do you want to go ahead and lead us off?
Okay, I sure will. Okay, so 11th grade, the first question I answered were who were my friends, and once again, I did do a move halfway through the year from Dell City High School, which was a huge school, and they were still adding on to Carl Albert High School, which is like the little high school in Midwest City. And it was much more rural and much smaller. I think our class was like 200. So most of my friends came from church, and did youth group, and I'd been with that group probably, I think, from the time I was in 7th grade on up. So we all kind of grew up together. So those were my main friends. And then when I got to Midwest City, I was able to actually make some other friends in high school, but those were my main friends. And then high school, I thought about boys. That was when in the 80s, and Polo came out with their cologne, and I remember all the boys wearing Polo cologne, and my head just kind of swimming whenever we had to change classes because I loved the smell of Polo. But I was definitely interested in boys, but I was too shy to reciprocate any kind of feelings for them. And then dreaming, I dreamed about actually being an adult. Was getting tired of being in school. So I just wanted to set my own schedule and not have to sit in a classroom or multiple classrooms each day with somebody talking to me. I just wanted to get up and go work, as I assumed adults did at the time. I knew that they worked 8 hours, but I thought, it's got to be great to be an adult because you can do whatever you want and nobody's telling you what to do. I've since learned about that little hard lesson. But that's what I would dream about when I was in high school. You want to go next, Leah?
Sure. So, 11th grade and high school. What did I think about other kids? Like romantically, I was really unsure about the whole thing. I had a lot of like a religious influence in my life, and so I had a lot of like conflicting feelings, or like felt like I wasn't supposed to have some feelings. I felt kind of like deficient for not having that romantic connection with my peers, but at the same time, I didn't really feel ready for it. So I felt like really mixed up inside about other kids in that way. With my teachers, I definitely bonded with them, and I felt like respect from them, and that was super important to me, is having that like adult connection where I felt like they thought of me as more than just some kid. Like they thought that my thoughts were worth listening to or worth respect. And my parents were pretty far removed from my daily life at that point. They were really focused on other things. They had both remarried at that point and had kind of some other kids in their lives that they were helping to take care of and kind of putting more focus on. So they weren't really like as much a part of my life. I also was not living with them in 11th grade. So I just saw them like intermittently. So that was kind of like a different situation with them. So Michelle, do you want to share about kind of what your answers were for some of these questions for 11th grade you?
Sure. I had just moved from a huge Tulsa school to a really rural country school, and my class size went from 1,700 to about 98. So I was kind of surly and bored and didn't have any friends. All those friends had gone together and grew up together, and it was kind of hard to break through there. And I was just ready to move to the next phase of my life. And at that point, because it is kind of a smaller school was really way too easy because they were learning concepts that we had already covered at Tulsa. And so I really liked some of my teachers, and they really made an impact in my life. But the other ones, mostly, I really didn't like them at all. So it was kind of a love-hate relationship between your teachers, and you really respected them, and they challenged you, and they took the time to engage you. And the other ones, you're just like, yeah, I'll do it, and I'll get the grade, but that's about it. And at that point, I was working for Pizza Hut, if memory serves, and working like till 2 a.m. So I had a pretty busy job, and I was also in the marching band, and that was kind of my outlet and having fun.
Awesome, thank you. Leslie, do you want to go next? For sure, in high school, all about socializing, not learning, bare minimum for good grades. Yeah. boy craziness evolved into having a serious boyfriend, having some of those first life experiences, right? Much choosier about which teachers you liked, disliked them intensely. The ones you did like, you wanted them to approve of you and like you back, and the others you didn't care. So yeah, really kind of getting to a new place with adults. Latasha, do you want to go next?
Okay. Yeah. By the time I was in 11th grade, I no longer lived in New York, so I got to go to school, quote unquote, down south, and I thought I had arrived. I thought I had it made because my school had grass. Okay, no longer had to play in the street yard, like, you know what I mean? It's like when I would send pictures, like my friends back in New York were like, "Oh, you're rich," because it was like I had a school bus. The school had grass. At 11th grade, I had a job, so I could buy my own clothes. Um, I think in between my sophomore and junior year, I lost like a ton of weight. I lost a bunch of weight, and I had the prettiest shape. All of a sudden, I was getting a lot of attention. I always wore glasses up until that point. I started wearing contacts, and then because I had transferred from the school in New York to the school out here in Oklahoma, the level of rigor was different. So I was no longer like that BC student that like had to study all the time and still struggled. All of a sudden, I found myself in advanced classes. By the time I was in 11th grade, I found out I had several scholarships to OU. So at that point, I really felt like, I don't know, I felt like I had it made. I felt like I was on top, like I knew everything about the world or whatever. And, my freshman year of college kind of busted that bubble. But yeah, it was really popular all of a sudden. My grades were amazing, and I had money in my pocket. So, yeah, it didn't even feel like my life. It felt like, I don't know. It felt
Thank you
like I
for
was living in
sharing.
a fairy tale or something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can see how that would be so weird too, like your friends in New York and like kind of having that juxtaposition of what they
Yeah,
were
they
thinking.
were like, you're living like the rich kids out on Long Island. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you're like, well, this is just a different, like, this is our norm or whatever in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so in 11th grade, well, for high school, I'd moved to Oklahoma City, so a bit bigger place. I still went to some smaller schools in the city though. But 11th grade, I was at a new school again. So it was awkward, but not like middle school awkward. It was just awkward because I didn't know anyone. These were people who had been together for quite some time. So I didn't really like school, and the school wasn't as academically challenging. So I was just bored. Didn't have a lot of friends. The friends I did have were all other places. So it's like I couldn't wait to get out of school because then I could call up friends from my hometown or I was also in Girl Scouts, and so there's always the next camping trip to look forward to, which is where I thought like, oh, those are my actual friends. And so yeah, so when it came to like dreaming about stuff, like I think in high school it was all a lot more like I knew what interested me and stuff, so things started to be a bit more clearer being a little bit older. So like I knew for sure I was like getting out of Oklahoma, I was looking towards college, because unlike moving around schools when you're a kid and it's your parents' choice, like I was like, college is when I get to pick and I'm going to pick a place that is good for me, that I like. And so just knowing a little more what I wanted and being able to look towards that a bit better than I would have in middle school. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Bailey, do you want to go next?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I moved to a really small town in the panhandle of Oklahoma when I was in ninth grade. Like I put in the chat, I had 32 kids in high school. There's 7 kids plus myself and my own class. And this was a town where, people were born and raised. Like, people didn't typically move into Balco, but my dad was a pastor, and that's why we moved there. So I learned really quick in high school. My mom became my best friend, and I was very active in sports, and I really won teachers' approval. And so I don't know, it was kind of hard to fit in. So I just put a lot of my efforts into my sports, and then I ended up getting, there's not a lot of choices of guys out there, and I was already pretty boy crazy, but I ended up being in a pretty semi-serious relationship until my junior year. And then after that, I was like, I'm done with boys. I just am ready to get out of high school. Kind of like some of you have already said, I had my eyes set on moving to the big city and going to college. So I wanted to do whatever I could do to get scholarships academically and sport-wise. And I was very happy to graduate high school.
Thank you for sharing. So I think we got everyone for both questions. If I am wrong, please someone yell at me. So we wanted to kind of ask you, and you can either unmute yourself and give your reflection or type in the chat, whatever is comfortable for you. But what did this exercise feel like for you? Did anything like interesting or kind of funny come up as you thought about those years? I liked Michelle's snowball fight in the classroom. That was, I thought it was funny, but I imagine since you talked about that was the worst trouble you had gotten in your academic career, that must have maybe also carried with it a lot of negative feelings too. But what did you guys think of this exercise?
I thought it was very good, like just to, kind of remember how awkward middle school was and how in high school you do have this like false sense of confidence or bravado.
For sure. Kind of that's what's going through your head. You're like not as like you're so confident about the world and you don't know as much about it.
Yeah.
I think it was, it's helpful because it makes me remember that even though that feels like it was forever ago, those feelings are still very real. And so I think it helps me be able to like understand when I'm interacting with other teens and stuff, like just probably what they're going through too.
I think for me, kind of some of what came up for me during this exercise, and of course, Adrienne and I are cheating a little bit because we've done it before. Some of it was a little, impersonal, just remembering, oh, this happened and this happened. But some of it was a little, sad too, like thinking about, oh, yeah, I really didn't feel great about some of those years. Oh, Michelle, I see what you said in the chat. It makes you remember how awkward growing up is. For sure, it is. We think it's really important to do this kind of an icebreaker when we're talking about teen services in this kind of an extended way, because there's so much going on for our teens. And sometimes I think we're not always in the frame of mind of remembering what it was like to be a teenager, whether it's more of that younger end of 6th grade or more of that older end about to, graduate and move into like the wider world, or you're starting to really try to assert your own adult identity. So it's really important to frame all of these discussions around what did it feel like when we were teenagers, and what might be going through our teens' minds. So the next stage that we're going to move into with our agenda is connected learning. But given where we're at time-wise, I think we'll go ahead and take a quick 10-minute break right now, and then come back in and start on connected learning at, what do you think, Adrienne, like 2:02 would be our 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Okay, guys, so now's a good time to take care of any needs, refill your coffee, do anything you need to do, respond to text messages, and we will come back together at 2:02 and start on connected learning. Started back again. So now we're going to move into connected learning and talk about that. So we're going to watch a short, about 5 minutes of a video or so. And I want you to kind of like, as you watch the video, think about the following couple of questions. Think about something that you learned, maybe with a teacher or like in an after school setting that was really, or even in class that was really relevant to you, like really connected with your own interests or passions. And then also think about kind of like what, if any, connections and outcomes there might be between what you are really good at now and then how that might have been supported by educators or other adults in your life when you were growing up. So now we're going to go ahead and I will share video. And we're going to mute our mics all up and down so that there's no sound interference. And we'll watch this for about 5 minutes. Oh, Michelle, I'm sorry about that. Can anyone else hear the video okay, or are you guys having sound problems with it? You can hear it? Okay, let me see. Let me turn on closed captions. And Michelle, also, I'm going to drop the link in here in the chat. We're watching from like 7 minutes, 20 seconds to like 12:55. Just kind of a short thing there. But I'm going to also try to turn on closed captioning and see if that helps us too. Okay, gotcha. So kind of thinking about that video and the idea of connected learning as connecting a teen's own interests and passions along with their peer group, their peer network, and out of school stuff, as well as with in-school learning or possibly, college pursuits or career pursuits or all of that. Let's kind of think about that in the context of our own lives, but also in kind of that video. What was something? So does anyone have anything that kind of occurs to them? Like, is there anything that maybe you learned in class or in an after-school setting that was really relevant to you? Kind of a passion or something that sparked a passion, maybe?
Okay, so I'll go first. So for me, it was movies. I really loved movies, and I think part of it was because at that time Siskel and Ebert was on, and so they did movie reviews, and I just loved hearing their discussions. And then from that, I don't know I got a lot of support, but I did find, I guess, like my people or something. Like when internet first started and they had news groups, and they would actually have news groups for individual television shows. And that, I think, is how I also found Television Without Pity. And that's a website. You can go there now, but there's really nothing there. But they used to do recaps. And so it was part review, part, almost scene by scene recaps. And I think by reading those and remembering Siskel and Ebert, and then once I got into library school and participating in YALSA's reading awards, I did like a 2 or 3 year deep dive into just reviewing and stories and plot structures and all sorts of things. And I think as if I were growing up now, I would probably have way more support just by, talking to either an adult or a librarian about, this is what I'm interested in. Can you help me find, or can we start talking about book reviews and then transforming that? And so I think in a way kids could do that. They have a better avenue now than I think before the internet, when it just seemed really kind of out there in a cloud that I wasn't sure what or how I could get there. Anybody else want to go?
And feel free to type it in the chat if you don't. Oh, Bailey, go for it.
Well, I never thought I was going to be a librarian. That wasn't my initial plan. I have always just loved people. I've been a people person, and history was one of my favorite classes, and I was just really interested in why people chose to do what they do and act how they act. And so, and since I loved crime and scary stuff, I wanted to go into psychology, and that's what my undergrad is in. And my history teacher was really supportive in that. I definitely agree with Adrian. Like, I think there's more opportunity I had no idea like what type of options were out there as far as jobs. I don't feel like I got a good understanding of all the different like avenues that I could have pursued. I just knew that I wanted to learn more about the brain and why people did what they did. So everybody was like, oh, that's psychology. And so it kind of just went from there, and I went into forensic psychology. And it wasn't until like 3 years ago that I got into this. And I really think if I would have known that this was an opportunity as a career, librarianship, it's something that I would have pursued a lot earlier, because it fits everything that I love, but in one job.
For sure. I think, before I actually did library work, I had no idea how that really came together like that and how people oriented it is. Does anyone else have any examples of things that they were interested in as a kid or a young person, and what kind of adults in your life, how they supported that? Jennifer, did you want to go?
Yeah. I think I mentioned a little earlier, like where I went to middle school, we were all supposed to, like, there was only like 30 kids in my class. And so one of the things that we had to do in addition to our classes was volunteer in some way around the school campus, because it's a preschool through 8th campus. And so one of the things there was that I had to volunteer at the library, which didn't seem like a lot at the time, because it's like, oh, I love being here and this is great that I get to spend an extra hour just hanging out in the library, which I guess I've been thinking about more now that I'm working at a library as an adult, because it was just something I've kind of always come back to since I got that early experience of like, here's what this is. And then something else would be that being in Girl Scouts, like, we joke that there's badges for everything. But that's also true in a lot of ways. So I think I got to try a lot of stuff, which I think prepared me a bit better for, I feel like, actually being an adult, because I was like, oh, I know I like this and I know I don't like that. And so, yeah, just having the opportunities to try different things was just really important. So
I love that. I absolutely agree. I think that opportunity to just try lots of stuff out, to really even start to approach what are my interests. Does anyone else want to share, like, kind of what were you interested in as a kid, and like how did adults around you do that? Natasha?
Well, I had my Uncle Anthony. He still works for Random House, and when I was little, I loved it because he always had arcs, and there were, especially in the 90s, when people, it seemed like people were paying more attention to, like, did you have the new Harry Potter book or not? Like, there were in some other books, but it's at that point, it's like I had the art, so I always got books before a lot of the other kids had access to them. And so when I was younger, that's kind of like where my popularity came from, was the fact that I would always have a lot of new titles. And so I kind of, like, it was, I kind of wanted to do that, but then, like, when I got a little bit older, I started becoming obsessed with my grandmother's Essence magazines, and then discovered that Essence was also, in the city, because, well, my grandma stays in Queens, but it's kind of like the suburbs, because she stays in Rosedale, Queens. So, but so I discovered, like, in addition to Random House, Essence was also in the city. So I didn't know exactly, but I knew I wanted to do something with, like, reading and writing. And then the other thing was, sometimes Random House would send my uncle out to London, and he would come back and talk about how much he loved London and all the things he did out there. And so I was just, I don't know, I was fascinated with, like, just reading and writing and having, like, a big fancy job in the city.
That's awesome. I can imagine how, like, the city just felt like that epicenter of everything, like, writing must happen there, and it's so glamorous. Does anyone else have any more to share about what was really important to you when you were young, what you were really interested in? Yeah, Bailey, what do you want to do when you grow up versus what are you passionate about? That's a great history teacher for sure, that he really tried to help you connect passions to potential careers. For me, one thing that I was really just got super into in high school was like art history. And I didn't go anywhere with it exactly, but I was very, very interested in it for a while. And I had a teacher that gave me like one of those gigantic like encyclopedia compendium type things from DK. And I like that was so awesome. Like I felt so seen, you know, to get that adult support of that interest. So thinking about the video and some of the elements that connected learning brings in, and where there's a lot more we're going to talk about with connected learning for sure, but what was something that maybe we've talked about in the discussion or something that you saw in the video that you hadn't really thought about before in regards to maybe passions, as especially being a teenager, and how like different environments might impact that? What's like something from the video or discussion that kind of struck you maybe a little differently, or something that was kind of new? And I think we'll probably go through all of our participants with some of these questions since we have such a small group. So Michelle, was there anything that was really like kind of a different thing for you with the video or with anything that anybody had said about passions as a teenager?
I was pretty, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to be when I was that age. The only kind of thing I had in high school was part of being a part of the marching band. That kind of took that high school learning or learning of music into a social gathering and let me have an outlet there. But as far as career and what I was going to do later in life, I had no idea. So I also echo Bailey's thing, because everyone at that age asks you, what are you going to do when you grow up? And it was pretty frustrating as a teenager to not be able to answer that question and still feel good about yourself. So I feel some compassion for the teens that just don't know. And these days you need to know so you can get the right education and go the right way. So I feel compassion for them. It's pretty tough.
I love that you said that. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, that idea that, oh, everybody knows what they want to do with their lives, and here I am 16 and I have no clue. I like video games. I don't know. Like, yeah, and that how that can make you feel like so uncertain, like everyone has it figured out, when like the people that do decide to go to college end up changing their major like, you know, a dozen times or something. Like nobody really has it figured out, but that feeling that everyone does can be really isolating. Jennifer, did you have any kind of new thoughts about teens and learning and any kind of parts of this after watching the video or hearing different people share?
I don't know, just I just kind of, I like the video kind of reiterated, like, you know, the support can really come from anywhere. Because I think as a kid, I just remember feeling like, you know, oh, you know, I have to impress my teachers because those are like the important adults I see every day. And then there's like my parents. Because when I was little, I would talk about how I wanted to be a writer, which sounds really cool. And it made sense because I read a lot. But what that actually looks like as a career, since I didn't necessarily have like writers in like my close circle to like look at these adults who had that career to look up to right there in my community, made it kind of difficult a little bit, when it's like you have this idea, but like you don't necessarily have people who know about it to like help foster that passion. So I actually think like in some ways kids these days are a little luckier because they can like at least get online and find resources. So yeah, just yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't fully formed all my thoughts, but
That's okay.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking about.
Yeah. It's a lot of this is processing and thinking and remembering us, like ourselves as kids, and kind of connecting it to teens today. And you're right. Yeah. Like Adrienne was saying earlier too, like you guys are both right that teens have so much more of an opportunity to like learn about the world now in ways that we maybe don't even like fully like realize. Like I don't know if you've ever seen like teens and skincare obsession now, but they can just like learn all the stuff on YouTube, and their skin is like, they're doing all these different steps, and I'm over here like, can you please teach me your ways? Like they're learning cooking, like just being like little master chefs off of YouTube University. So there's so many different ways that they're able to explore things now, Reddit groups or just a wealth of online information, sometimes maybe even too much information. Let's see. Oh, yep. Bailey, what you got?
I was going to say, I definitely didn't realize in high school that there was other opportunities to have a career other than going to college. That was such a huge thing ingrained to me that, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a 4-year degree. And so I feel like not that I didn't enjoy what I did. However, I feel like I kind of put myself in a box, or there just wasn't other options presented to me. And I don't know if anybody else experienced that or that was just my personal experience, but I feel like nowadays there seems to be not as much pressure as going to a 4-year university. There's plenty of ways to have successful careers.
Yeah, I think that's true. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Adrienne. My bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to jump in and said, yeah, that's exactly right, Bailey. There's this guy, and I cannot remember his name, and he's like making millions and millions of dollars. But I looked him up on Wikipedia, and it's like he had like 5 different careers, So, it doesn't have to be a straight path from, you graduate, you go to college, you get the career. And even then, if you've noticed people who are leaving their careers and doing something different, so they may stay with some place, from the time that they graduate from college or early 20s and stay there for 10, 15 years and decide, I don't want to do this anymore and do something different. So I think not knowing that, because in my generation, I watched my parents, and basically you had the one job, and that's the job you had. And I think their parents was the same way, is that they either worked at the factory for 40 years or, and that was their job. And then they retired, and that was it. And you didn't have multiple careers. And I was just talking to my mom, and my oldest daughter, I've lost count how many jobs she's had. I can count on one hand how many jobs I've had in my life. And she's had, I think, almost twice as many, and she's still in college. And so the jumping around was always seen as a bad thing, but it's really not, because you're kind of picking up things here, there, and everywhere. So it's kind of good to get that exposure. And I love that the kids now seem to be a little bit more fearless about that. Like, well, I'll just quit and get another job, or I'll do something different. And I really like that they they feel like they have that kind of open opportunity for them at the ages that they are, and they don't have to wait until they feel like they're half dead in a job and they no longer enjoy. So that's what I wanted to say.
For sure. I think that's so great. Like, to think about kind of maybe the different norms also, right? Like, and to be able to think about what maybe applied to ourselves when we were teens, like what applied to the cultural mainstream wisdom about jobs when we were teens versus what that might look like now, and that emphasis on exploration and interest. And Michelle, I saw you put in the chat, there are so many more degrees that you can get now. It used to be a very narrow path. Yeah, I think there's several different like presentations and articles I've read over the past couple of years that just talk about how for today's kindergartners, the jobs that most of them are going to be doing haven't even been invented yet. So there's just such a broad like future before us. Like, we don't even know necessarily what the possibilities are that are going to be out there. Let's see. Leslie, did you have any ideas that anything about connected learning or some of the ideas of what you were passionate about as a youth, or maybe anything in the video that struck you or anything like that? I liked what Bailey said earlier about asking kids what they want to do when they grow up. Didn't even know what possibilities there were. Degree in education. Yeah, and would have loved to have been asked, what are you passionate about? I think that that's something that we can absolutely translate to our public and school library settings, and even in our own networks, just around youth and kids and teens. What are you interested in? And helping them see like the paths forward with that. And like the speaker said in the video, that's not necessarily to say that every single experience that a kid is having needs to be connected learning. Like, sometimes they want to have, fun without doing like metacognition about it, and that's totally fine. But I think that we can really offer a lot of opportunities in our public library setting to help teens, and school library setting to help teens think about how to connect what they're interested in into other realms of their life and their future. Let's see. Latasha, did you have any thoughts kind of about connected learning, or what what the video talked about, or anything like that felt kind of new or different? Or even maybe just something that you hadn't thought about before quite that way, or any of the stuff that's come up? And Jennifer, yep, I see your chat as well. In college, you majored in American Studies, but you'd never heard of the subject until you took your first course in it. Yeah, that was me as well. Every new class I took in college, I wanted to change my major. So let's get like maybe a little bit more thinking about, before we move into this next section, in which we're going to talk a lot more about our own communities. Let's kind of start by thinking a little bit. What kind of interests do teens in your community have? And how could those connect to academic pathways, or careers, or things outside of and inside of school? So I'm going to go ahead and say Roblox, so we take that off the table. But yeah, there's a lot of teens that are interested in Roblox. It's the new Minecraft, right? But there's a lot of kids interested in kind of that video gaming situation. And I wonder how that could connect to things, even past the surface of video game design or anything. Oh, yeah, Bailey, TikTok, absolutely. Well, think about that content creation, though, and how many jobs there are in brand management, right? In social media. Like, that is a whole sphere of an industry. Yep, Leslie, that whole like going viral, right? thinking about different music content, whether it's creating it themselves or creating content to it. And influencers, like, my God, when I was growing up, that wasn't like a job, you know. Yeah, Bailey, absolutely. That video editing skill. Yeah, that kind of like, how do you target your content to your audience to kind of bring about that desired like thought or feeling from them, and therefore going, as Leslie was talking about, getting that internet fame, virality. And y'all can keep typing if you want, that's cool, but also you can unmute if you want to talk about what you're thinking about with the teens in your community and the teens that you know and what they're interested in right now. And even if you're not sure how that could connect out to a larger pathway, just what are teens around you interested in?
I feel like I've been so far removed from our teams lately. We had a really hard time getting a team program up and going here at the library. And I feel like just as we were getting something pretty consistent, COVID happened. And then I haven't had much luck like connecting with them since we have not been doing any in-person programming. But prior to that, there was a whole lot of interest in video games, music, and art. Art was a really, really big thing with the teens that were coming to programs here.
Yeah, art is so important, especially as more and more art programs are cut. That creative expression is just huge. And I have a lot of sympathy for sure when you're like, oh, 2020 is our year, TM. And then like, I don't know if y'all have seen the meme of like the calendar, and it's like January forest fires, and like February like this and that, and March murder hornets. So then like by July it's like aliens. Jennifer, what did you have?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking because I've actually only been a librarian for a year now, and that's something that happened at my library. Like, my library is only a block away from the schools. And there's been a lot of turnover. So there hadn't really been a lot of teens coming through, but I had a couple walk down after school, like just right after, just waiting for their parents to come pick them up. And I noticed they were comparing Beyblades, which I remember from my middle school days of the 90s, and was like, oh, would y'all like to come by after school and play this? And they're like, oh, we could do that without the bullies, that the kids who bully us in the cafeteria. And I was like, well, sure. And so it started with just a couple of them coming down, and then they started getting away from Beyblade, but the numbers just kept growing. So I had like this whole big group of middle school boys coming to the library after school, and they would play Beyblade, they'd play Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes they'd do Magic the Gathering. They just had all these different like card games and stuff they would just bring with them and hang out. And so, yeah, so I've just been trying to think what more I could do with that. But that's kind of where I am, because like the middle school boys, like they found, I don't know, I guess I just lucked out and found their niche and was able to provide that space for them to enjoy it. I don't know what the older teens are doing, but like I said, middle school, they've got their games like on lock, because they have like these whole big decks of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that they come down here with. So, yeah.
That's so awesome. I love that. And you really developed out for them that peer network that's a part of connected learning and helping them find that common interest with other people who can share that interest. That's one of the big things with, like teen services and teen learning, right? Mizuki Ito had a book in like 2010, I think, and it's hanging out, messing around, geeking out. And that became Homago. was like the framework for that kind of like teen interest based stuff and teen learning. And you're doing the thing. Yeah, baby plates. So now we are not going to take a break, contrary to what the PowerPoint might have fooled you into. I got messed up on my slides there. We are going to watch another short video first about connected learning and the kind of population you work with, and to reflect on why educational equity is really important for them. So we're going to talk about, let me see where I'm at here. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and slide into connected learning in the pursuit of educational equity. And then we'll take a short break right after that, since we'll be at our hour mark again. If that sounds good, Adrian.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to watch a short video about connected learning and the pursuit of educational equity. And then we're going to come together and discuss our community and maybe see what similarities we see between our community and other communities from our co-participants, and what are some ideas that kind of strike you as important related to connected learning and thinking more deeply about educational equity, and how can connected learning support educational equity. So we're going to watch a short video. It's about 3 minutes, and we're going to all mute our mics. So kind of thinking about that video, what struck you about that video and about connected learning? Like, what were some of the interests that you saw displayed in there? And what did the connection or the connected, the word connected mean, kind of looking at that video? And feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself. Either way is fine. Bailey, was there anything that like kind of maybe struck a chord with you, or anything you saw there?
That's what I was just thinking. I'm still thinking. It was a really good video. It was yeah. Sorry.
No, I put you on the spot. Yeah, a lot of these ideas are really kind of expansive, or the more that we think about them, the more they have other ideas that kind of bloom and flower along with them. So I totally get that. Some of this is just gonna be a lot of processing, like after this session, and thinking about what else is out there. So if we have thoughts about the video and about like connected learning and things like that, feel free to throw those out at any time. Let's talk a little bit about our communities right now. So one of the things in the video, they talked about youth from privileged backgrounds and from underprivileged backgrounds, or kind of youth that had a lot of access to resources and youth that had less access to resources. And one of the ways that that video framed it was a little bit like maybe suburban versus urban was a feeling that I get when I watch that video. Whereas for my community, Tulsa City County Library covers, like, it's a city county system that covers 10 cities. And one of the big divides that we see for sure is kids in extremely rural areas not having even that kind of literal connection that part of the video was talking about of broadband internet. Like maybe the best internet access they have is like mobile data. So that's definitely a thing that we are concerned about and think about for our community, and providing kind of learning experiences, or maybe exposure to different passions and ideas at the library. Of course, we also have a big kind of spectrum of that kind of living, right? We have rural, suburban, and urban areas that our library system covers. And we have a lot of division between resource backgrounds, right? Kind of the South Tulsa area can a lot of times be thought of as like more resource. It's kind of the flip of OKC, right? Where I think like kind of North OKC and like Edmond area and all of that. It's kind of flip for us for South Tulsa. And then we have kind of neighborhoods that have been losing a lot of industry, like West Tulsa, and that have kind of dipped further into, fewer and fewer resources and different budget cuts, or schools losing art programs and band programs and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of different areas that our library system covers that have different levels of resources that we're trying to figure out how to make equitable experiences when kids in different areas have different tools to connect to their interests. So does anyone else want to talk about like kind of what their community is like that they serve, and with a particular focus on teens?
I'll go. One thing that did kind of struck a chord with me just now as you were talking is thinking back to all the towns that I've lived in. So I've moved quite a bit in Oklahoma. I've always lived in extremely rural areas, like places that didn't even have a local library. So I think working in a library was just never my radar, because I never went to my towns that I lived in were always so small that there wasn't one. And I remember going to college my freshman year, and I forgot who mentioned this earlier. Somebody said they moved from a bigger city to maybe a more rural area from where they were living. And I remember moving to the city, and some of the opportunities that people were also freshmen, some of the courses they already completed, that was never even, I didn't even know that was possible to do while I was in high school. So it just wasn't available. And so anyways, that just kind of struck a chord with me. Like there's definitely like how can we help that divide between like rural areas and more urban areas. Altus is, it's definitely like small and rural. I mean, it could be smaller. It's like around 19,000. And so I feel like we're kind of in between. And anybody who lives down here would think that, we kind of are out in the middle of nowhere. And now I just lost my train of thought.
No, that's definitely awesome to talk about. Like, yeah, I remember, thinking that too. Like a couple different people talked about kind of that movement between school systems that had been really like challenging with their curriculum and everything, and then moving into a school system that, wasn't as advanced maybe, and that kind of weird shift between them, right? Jennifer, do you want to talk about what your community is like what your teens are like in your community, and kind of that serving them with regard to educational equity?
Okay. Yeah, so Sulphur's pretty rural, and being like in the Arbuckle Mountains, like good internet signal is really hard here. So really across the board, like the Wi-Fi, the internet, or the Wi-Fi here at the library is very important to the whole community. And so like with like the teens I have managed to get so far, like there are days where they just come in and they just sit in the meeting room with their phones connecting to the Wi-Fi and doing things on the internet, because once they get home, they can't. And they're not supposed to have them out in class at school. And then when they're at home, they don't have signal. So like those couple hours is like, that is their internet time. And so, yeah, so internet service is like a big thing. And then, yeah, it can be a bit of a poor community here. And so yeah, there aren't always as many opportunities around. So yeah, Wi-Fi, like I said, Wi-Fi is the big thing. And oh yeah, Bailey put people in the parking lot. Yeah, that's huge. I had an alarm go off one day, and there was a couple of. I still think of them as teens. I think it's like they're like 19, 20. They were hanging out at like midnight outside using the Wi-Fi. And so yeah, Wi-Fi is really the big deal, because there's so much you can get off of it, but if you don't have access, then you're not getting those things. And like when the schools shut down, that's the other thing, is like with everything that's been going on with the pandemic, like there's some that have access to things and can stay connected, but then there's some people who are, especially the teens, because I haven't really been able to get in touch with many of my teens because they don't have that home internet. So it's like all of a sudden, you know, all the resources that we had here, they're disconnected from them because they're in middle school, so they can't drive themselves into town to the library. And then they don't have the internet to do any digital stuff. So it's like, how do you bridge those gaps?
For sure, yeah. That internet access is huge. Latasha, what about your community? What's going on with your teens in your community? Sorry, Latasha, I think you're muted. If you want to unmute and talk about your community. Oh, awesome, cool.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. So, teens I serve are at an alternative school. So, most of them fall under 3 categories. So you have some kids that are just there for credit recovery. Something happened, they just need to get caught up with their high school credits. But then you have some kids that are teen parents, and then you have other kids that are previously incarcerated youth. So the judge pretty much said you can stay in the county or you can continue your education. And then I think also like 71% of our kids classify as homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act. And we're located in the Midtown area. So we definitely have like urban youth, but they're very much into a lot of the same things that you guys talked about. They love Roblox, they love TikTok videos. A lot of times the teenage parents, it's usually moms, but sometimes we get guys that are young single parents, like 16. But most of the time they're just like trying to find work or trying to find books. At one point, a lot of the moms were afraid to check out books because they were afraid the babies would mess them up and they would have a fine and all this. And so I wrote a grant and just got a bunch of board books so that they wouldn't have to worry about things like that. But yeah, and so the area, can you guys still hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the area that we're in is currently experiencing gentrification. It's a Midtown area, so it's early. So some of the kids are, gentrification. Sometimes it displaces people. So we do have a lot of kids that stay in the homeless shelter, but I guess once they live in the homeless shelter for 2 weeks, they get moved up the ranks for Section 8, but I don't think a lot of the kids know what's happening. Like, I saw all these things happen in New York when I was younger, so, like, I understand, like, forced suburban flight is like when the millionaires start moving into the city, then if you're working poor, you do get pushed out to the suburbs because, like, if you're like really poverty stricken, the government will find a way to keep you in the city. And then if you're really rich, you can afford to be in the city. But if you're kind of like where you make a little too much for welfare, but you're still really poor, then you end up getting shoved to the suburbs, whether you wanted to be there or not, just because the city is no longer a viable option for you. But like with a lot of our kids, I don't think they fully understand the role gentrification is playing in their lives.
That makes sense for sure, especially for kind of around here where that's not been a thing, or that's not been as much a feature of Oklahoma life, probably, like as it has been for like New York life, probably. So I can like totally see how that's not even something maybe like language that they understand or have like heard before, like while they're growing up. So I think that there's some really interesting different themes here that we're talking about with regard to different ways that some of our youth that we're serving are marginalized, or how they are experiencing maybe a lack of equity, whether that's like lack of connectivity on a kind of an infrastructure level, like maybe they have the time or the home support, but they don't have devices or connection, like literal internet connection. Or maybe they have a lot of things going on in their life, being previously incarcerated, maybe on parole, and they have a lot of interests, but they may not have the financial resources to be able to access it. Like maybe they could lack devices, even if they're in more of an urban setting where they would have access to Wi-Fi more readily. Or maybe they are kind of in an area where they might have that kind of internet access, but they don't have support of maybe adults who can help guide their like interests or help them connect to what they might be into. Maybe they're in a really rural area and they're spread out and they don't have peers to connect with. And Michelle, I see you're saying you have good success with outdoor programming where you can support social distancing. And that's another thing where that's a kind of a rural or suburban versus urban divide, right? If you have like even that literal space, if you have like a large parking lot, that may be something that's achievable versus not having that space with the ability to social distance if you're more densely populated. Let's see. So Bailey, Jennifer, and Latasha have talked about, you've all talked about your communities, and I talked about mine. Michelle, do you want to talk about your community and kind of what you see there with your teens?
Absolutely. Our library has always had a really robust children's program, but we've dropped it off after children's. And when they got to tweens and teens, we didn't offer any programming. We changed that about 5 years ago, and we carved out a spot for them in the library, and we've started introducing programming for teens. And got to tell you, at first it was no-go. Nobody came, nobody wanted to do anything. And just now we're starting to get some really good results with teen programming. Because of COVID, we've had to move it outside. I'm really lucky that Bartlesville just built an outdoor place to do those kinds of things, and it's about a block from the library. So we had people going out there and teaching the kids improv at the outdoor facility. We've had karaoke. We've had painting pizza outdoors underneath a thing. And so it's been great to be able to, and the kids are liking it. Not huge numbers yet, but they're consistent and they're different kids coming to different things. So we're starting to pique their interest, which is what I'm very excited by. We just were notified that we got a digital inclusion grant from ODO, and we're going to be able to have 30 hotspots that we can check out. I think that will make a difference in the life of a lot of teens who maybe don't have the resources right now, because there is a big divide. We also have a things collection, which we check out, and about a third of the things collection is instruments. So we did that quite intentionally, so the kids who maybe couldn't afford to buy an instrument could check out different instruments, or before you went into 5th grade and you had to pick an instrument, they could try a couple of them or 10 and figure out what they wanted to do. So very excited that due to a nice endowment we got, I'm building a new teen area right now, and I'm working with the architects. And so within the next couple months, we should have a totally custom teen area for our teens. And I'm hoping we can figure out how to serve that segment of the population who love our library.
That's so awesome. I love that. And I love what you talked about, and also what Latasha talked about when you guys are talking about grants and how you're meeting those needs that you see, or kind of allaying some of those fears. Like you're talking about, Latasha, with the young moms worried that they maybe shouldn't check things out because they might not be able to get them back in the right condition or something. And kind of just being able to provide that resource to help them not be worried about it, so that they can access things that will support them. Leslie, did you want to share a little bit about what your community is like, or what especially things are like for teens in your community? Yeah, good success with the after-school kids, having snacks, welcoming them. Yeah, that access to food is a real worry. We have a few branches that are meal delivery sites, and that I know that that's really needed. A lot of that access to food. And I mean, sometimes we want to think about, like, what does equity look like on a level of how can we get these kids to get to have hour of code, or like STEM and computer programming experiences like other peers, or being able to play around with making their own stop motion video, or all of that. And then sometimes we have to really meet needs that are even, more critical than that, to even get to the point of being able to absorb very much exploration with podcasts or something like that. It's tempting to say something about Maslow's hierarchy, but we know, of course, that all of those things exist kind of not in strict, pyramid level forms, right? It's that need for food and for housing, like Latasha was talking about with her kids, and for that food insecurity access, like you're talking about, Leslie, that exists simultaneously with those kinds of learning opportunities and passion-based opportunities need as well. So there's so much to help our youth out with meeting. So definitely, I want everybody to think a lot more about how can connected learning support educational equity, and how can access to different programming at the library really help meet some of those needs that we're seeing, to be able to give them, the youth that we're seeing at our library, to be able to give them those kinds of connected learning opportunities, so they can connect passions, so they can even figure out what their passions are, and then connect to those and figure out how to take that even further. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about theory into practice after a short break. So this is going to be a handout that was in the session room area, and I'm going to drop that link into the chat as well. So that's going to be the Connected Learning Guide. So we're going to talk about different aspects of it. We want to review portions of it. This is developed by the Connected Learning Exchange. And the Connected Learning Exchange says, or it's developed by the Chicago Learning Exchange as well. Connected Learning provides a foundation for much of Chicago Learning Exchange's work and is based on more than a decade of research into the factors that lead to deeper engagement in youth, regardless of their socioeconomic background. CLX has created a connected learning guide that translates that research into an easy-to-use reference for educators, mentors, and other youth-serving professionals. So we are going to check out that resource guide, and we're going to each review a different component of the Connected Learning Guide to focus on in that handout. So let's see.
Yeah, if we go on to the, okay, so I think we're going to go to the next slide.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just going to do the ones in red.
Okay, so when you look at that PDF that's at that link from the chat, we've got Connected Learning Guide, a field-tested resource for practitioners, and there's different aspects to the handout, but we're going to look at just a few parts of it. But first, I'm going to take us all the way back to slide 11 because it is time for a break. So we're going to take a 10-minute break before we go into theory, into practice, and bringing it home. Or actually, Adrienne, do you think with our time, maybe more a 5-minute break?
Yeah, because I
ran a little long.
This is our first time doing this, and so it's just really interesting that even with just 5 people, we have a lot of information in here that I'm glad we're covering. But I think we may have to do just a little bit of moving a little quicker through, just so we end at 4.
Okay.
Because I don't want to keep people past 4 o'clock, but.
For sure.
But, you know, I have a tendency to over-prepare. So.
Well, we'll never run out of content.
No, we will not. That's the whole point. It's not to run out of content.
Okay, guys, then let's take a 5-minute break, about 5 or 6 minutes. We will come back and start back at 3:18. So I'm actually going to run out of the room for a second, too, as part of this break. So 3:18, we're going to come back together. So take this opportunity to our last module of our session. We're going to talk about kind of some of the theory of connected learning. We're going to talk about how to put that into practice. So, let's see. Well, I'm not sure. So if you click on that link that's in the chat, you can follow along with that PDF and kind of look at the Connected Learning Guide and all of the principles of that. So why connected learning? Connected learning is a model for understanding and designing youth learning experiences. And part of what we do in public libraries when we're talking about programming is designing youth learning experiences. We may not think of ourselves as educators in that way, but we are. And some of us, you know, especially school librarians, already do think of yourselves as educators in that way. So you're one up on the rest of us. But the kind of the important points of the Connected Learning Guide here are to talk about the different sections, particularly of interests, relationships, and opportunities. So on page 2 of the guide, it talks about how might we design experiences that allow interests to ignite youth motivations to learn. And I think this connects back to what I believe it was Jennifer was saying about Girl Scouts and how there's a badge for everything, and that teaches you a lot about what you might be interested in. And then somebody also said in the chat, it maybe like helps you know what you're not interested in, which is almost like, I would say that's as important when you're talking about passions and interests for learning. And talking about kind of, when we're talking about that interest-driven exploration or learning, how will you know if youth are motivated to continue learning? How do you take that past just that one library program about stop motion animation or Lego? And then relationships. How can we design environments that build supportive relationships with peers and adults? How do you cultivate peer-to-peer relationships among youth based on shared interests? What can adults do to create a safe space for connected learning? How do you create an open environment with a shared purpose? And how do you know that youth feel supported on their path to continued learning? And then with regard to opportunities, how can we connect youth learning to future opportunities that have tangible payoffs? So how do we take this one program on learning, like the Renegade or whatever, which is a popular TikTok dance, but how do you take that beyond this program into other places? How can youth recognize and translate skills that they've learned into new contexts where those skills carry value? What can you do to broaden context for learning, creating greater relevance and significance? And how can you build your own connections to broker civic, academic, and career opportunities for youth? So how will you know that youth are having connected learning experiences of real value? So I've kind of mismanaged our time a little bit, so we aren't able to spend as much time going through this handout. So I really, really hope that you look extensively at it after this session. But thinking about interests, learning is motivating when it grows out of a personal interest. When we talk about kind of that interest, like Latasha, like you had in the Random House Arcs and the Essence magazine, and kind of that interest in writing and publishing and literary things that you're personally interested in, right? Relationships is another important part of this connected learning, right? Learners need support from peers and mentors so that they persist through setbacks and challenges. So when you have someone that you can reach out to with questions, recently in one of our, we have a digital literacy lab in our downtown library, and we had a kid whose mom worked at the courthouse across the street from the library, and he came in with her to work for about a week because he was suspended from school, so he had to be somewhere. And he came in and started learning how to do special effects and video editing in our digital literacy lab. And he developed a kind of a relationship with our digital literacy coordinator there, Caitlin Seagraves. And she was able to help him when he got stuck with, where do I go from here? Where do I go, like, after I've done this tutorial? Or I just can't figure this out. So kind of having those mentorship things, or the kids that play together in Roblox, and one kid says, I don't know how to make this thing happen. How do I get through this level? And other kids in that chat room say, oh, you have to press this combination of keys or things like that. Having those networks that you can learn through, or even like myself, just reaching out to library Twitter to be like, hey guys, I have the opportunity to expand a collection. What titles do you have for me in this category? Or what am I missing in that category? Opportunities. Success beyond the classroom requires tangible connections to real-world career and civic opportunities. So this is where our networks with different people outside of the library come into play, right? So if I'm able to connect with a local bakery maybe, and have that person come in and lead a cake in a mug program, can the teens in that program now see how this is a thing that they could do for a living, right? This is someone that they could see themselves as. How can they take this thing that they're learning right here and go out beyond our room, our meeting room, and our program space into being able to recreate this in other settings, whether that's at home or with friends elsewhere, or maybe even exploring that as a career or an academic pathway. So another thing that we want everyone to really think about is, what are you already doing that supports this principle? Just like what I believe, Jennifer, you were saying about Beyblades, right? And Magic the Gathering. You're already supporting that interest, that personal interest, by saying, hey, do you guys want to do that at the library? Like, just being that person too, that helps them kind of see that their interest is valid, that it's okay to like that, and providing that opportunity for them to have that network building by providing the space in the library. So what am I already doing to support the principle of the interest-based learning or relationships or opportunities? And what could I do this month to support it more? And how could I address this principle this year? Obviously, with some of our inability to have in-person programs right now, or having to have highly modified programs, like Michelle, you're talking about with those outdoor programs that you're having to support social distancing. Some of this can be a little more difficult on the face of it. Like, we might have to do it in a different way, but I think that there are still opportunities. So can anyone really think of an example of what you've done maybe in the past year with programming or services that you've supported interests or relationships or opportunities, and kind of share it with the group really quickly? And this could be in a school setting or a program or anything. Oh, Latasha, did you have one?
Yes, with a lot of the boys have the SoundCloud, and so they had a thing on a tidal wave, through Follette, like a little mini studio that I would set up on Thursdays, and some of the boys would come in there and they would make new beats, and then sometimes you get a guy because some of them actually feel like they can rap, others just feel like they make good beats, and so they would come and interact with each other, and they would upload it to their SoundCloud, and it had a keyboard and a little, and it had headphones, so I didn't have to hear it either, so that was nice. They could hear what they were doing, but it didn't disrupt others. And then for the young ladies, I had a No Cub Club, and so it's a book club where it's just moms, and I actually so it was myself and then another teacher who's a mom, and then several of the girls, and we actually read Elizabeth Acevedo's With the Fire on High, and it's about a single mom in her senior year of high school, just trying to navigate what's next. What do I go to college? Do I, pursue a career in cooking because she wants to be a chef, and also dealing with co-parenting issues, because a lot of our girls are having to deal with that, where they have to work on, college entrance exams, college essays, and also learning how to co-parent with the father of their child.
That is so cool. I love all of that so much. What a perfect book for that, for sure. Oh, Elizabeth Acevedo is so good. I love that. And the SoundCloud thing especially. And that is getting totally toward production-centered learning too, which, you're next level already with connected learning. You don't even need this pre-conference. That's awesome. I love that so much. Does anyone else have anything they want to share about what they've been doing, or what they've maybe done in the past year that has hit any of the principles of connected learning? Go for it, Billy.
Well, I kind of put it in the chat, but I was going to say one thing that I feel like, I guess, that kind of hits just the relationships and possibly opportunities, which I'm in a public library, not a classroom, but last summer during summer reading program, we had Teen Tuesdays every Tuesday. And like the first 2 weeks, nobody came. And then I had a couple more come. And then by the end of the summer, we had about a consistent 15 or so coming. And then as school started, they asked if we were going to continue to meet every week. And during the summer, I had very specific activities planned, revolving around the summer reading theme. And I hadn't really thought about doing it every week moving forward. And then majority of them were like, well, we just would like to come and hang out. So we continued doing Teen Tuesdays every week. I didn't always have like a big program plan. I would just have a couple of laptops set up. I would put out some of my 3D doodler pens and really just a space for them to come and hang out. And it was really cool. The group kind of dwindled. We had basically like this core group of 5 to 8. And then every once in a while they would bring a friend or another friend. We would have a few more. But it was really neat just to see over this last year how those relationships, how I really got to know them. They really looked forward to coming every week. And so I was hoping to be able to build off of that. And it just kind of has dwindled since we've obviously haven't had any in-person programming since March.
Yeah, that has definitely put a dent in a lot of the relationships. And I know summer is often a time where we get that momentum back too for the public library. It's like the flip of school versus public, right? Like, Latasha, when you lose them all, we get them at the public library. So I definitely feel that sympathy for kind of us losing that momentum. But I love what everyone has said so far about building that space. And Leslie had said in the chat as well, having a place, letting them know that they have a place here instead of continuously scolding them, kind of gathering together and welcoming them. And I think that that is so key. And that really gets to how much we're already using this principle and framework in our buildings. So I'm going to go ahead and drop our other handout that's in the in our course room. And this one is another handout about connected learning. And it talks about the 3 elements that connected learning brings together, those interests, relationships, and opportunities, as well as the core properties of connected learning, which are also on the slide up here, production-centered, shared purpose, openly networked. So this is a good handout that you can kind of take with you in a more of a 3-ring binder friendly form to help inform your programs and further work with teens to help bring connected learning into your practice. So we've talked a lot about how connected learning is stuff that we're already doing in a lot of ways. The thing that's really important about it, and the thing that YALSA, the Young Adult Library Services Association, which is funding this project as well as even this session, the thing that YALSA is really interested in promoting is that we're intentional about bringing connected learning into our work with our teens to make sure that they have what they need in order to succeed, whether that is space to create their next, mixtape that they can go viral like Lil Nas X, or whether it's that book club to be able to picture themselves, beyond this moment here in high school. Or maybe it's that opportunity for a network where they can talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! And develop relationships that help take them beyond just their own solitary interest. So definitely we want you to take those handouts, particularly the second one, and think about how to integrate those 6 principles into your own programming and services. And one thing, just kind of like a meta thing to think about this, especially if you are trying to convey this to your board, your commission, your administration, your leadership, or if you're trying to even talk about this with your children's programming counterpart. For a while now, we've had the ECRR principles for children and early literacy, right? That's the Every Child Ready to Read principles. And there were 6 principles that got turned into 5 different modes of expression. So the first set had phonological awareness and things like that. And then it got moved into talk, sing, read, write, play. And so you have those things like developing motor skills and all that subsumed under write, and different elements of getting ready to read. And so when we do early literacy programming in public libraries especially, we're using that theoretical framework to put out kind of the surface level stuff of that story time that helps get kids ready to read. In this same way, what we're trying to do with connected learning and some of the other modules that we have, we're trying to have that theoretical framework and underpinning so that we know what things we can do to help drive student success and teen success in a way that we can communicate why this program that's like, will it waffle? And it's just a bunch of different stuff in waffle makers. Why is that critical and important and helpful? So a lot of these trainings that Adrienne and I are going to be offering for everyone across the state over the next year or so, that's all about trying to help connect what we're doing with a way to communicate why we're doing it and what it does for teens. So we've talked about the principles of connected learning, and we've talked about how it's stuff that we're already doing in a lot of ways and why we need to be intentional about it. And we want you guys to keep talking about this. You can email us and talk to each other and talk to other teen services people in your network about connected learning and about all of the different aspects of the Transforming Teen Services project. If you go to YALSA's website, you'll be able to find a ton of information about kind of the future of teen services and why they're really trying to have this different new approach. So you can read more about the project at this link, the National Forum of Transforming Teen Services. And now, well, we're going to kind of skip that. And we talked about how can we integrate these principles into our practice. So we've talked a lot about connected learning now, and we've talked about how it might look for our different libraries. We've talked about kind of how it can support educational equity for what it can do for us and our teens. So we'd like to reflect for a little bit now on kind of what we've thought about and talked about as part of this training. So does anyone want to share kind of what has come up for them about connected learning and the information in the session, or things that you've heard from each other about kind of like what connected learning brings up for you now? Or maybe about connecting with teens around their interests or different ideas you have? And it is totally fine for you to be like, you know, this is a lot and I am going to be processing it for a while.
Right. So I'm going to echo what Leah just said. I mean, we did 2 days of this training and it was intense and full day. And you can just imagine just from the 3 hours that we were talking and Leah and I presenting this is the tip of the iceberg. So this is like a very tip of the iceberg. So this is just one component of the whole Transforming Teens Connected Learning. There's a whole separate one on computational thinking. So as your brains are trying to figure out what you want to do, and you may be feeling a little like, wow, this is a lot of information. It is a lot of information. It's a lot of thinking, but I found it very exciting and very thrilling. So as you think about things and you write things down, if you have any questions at all, you can always email either Leah or myself. And especially those of you in the systems, if you're ready, if you want us to come out, I mean, we'll be doing this training for the next 1.5 years, and not just systems either. I mean, public libraries, I mean, this is part of what the YALSA grant is for us to do this training in our state. So I completely understand if you guys are just like, oh my gosh, I need to just like take 2-3 hours and just kind of think before I can answer any more questions. But yeah, if you have anything that you from the session right here that you kind of just want to share with the rest of us, just right off the top of your heads, just feel free to jump right in.
Yeah, and some of these prompts might be useful if you want to put into the chat, or if you want to unmute or anything. If there's any one of these sentence starters that you can share one thing that you got from this sentence or from this session, like I wish, I wonder, my like wow moment was, or just a wild card. And while you guys are like thinking about something that you can share from this session that you can either type in or unmute, like Adrian was saying, we are available to train all over the state for you guys, but also I want to make sure that you guys know that the trainings that we would do would not necessarily look like this session. It could be this exact session repeated, but the sessions are very modular and there's so much to connected learning, but there's also other aspects of this new framework of transforming teen services. There's also ages and stages, which we just barely got into with talking about our experiences as 6th graders and as 11th graders. There's a whole other training about developmental psychology of adolescents and how we can be thinking about how we can best serve teens at different ages and what they need from us and from their world to succeed. And then there's a whole framework called computational thinking. And even though the STEM root of the word computer is in the name, it's not necessarily about computers at all. It's about problem solving. So how can we use that framework to underpin our teen services work? And then there's also way more to educational equity that we can talk about too. So this pre-conference was, as much as anything, a quick overview of a bunch of aspects of this new framework that we're going to be offering trainings on for a while. And those trainings will be delivered through simultaneous webinars possibly, but also through online courses through the platform Canvas. So just, different modules each week and a lot more time maybe to reflect in between each module, and really a lot of ability to get a lot deeper into some of the subject matter too. So there's a lot more from Transforming Teen Services, from YALSA's project that we're going to be implementing over the next year. Yeah, Bailey, thank you for dropping that video in the chat about social emotional learning, how to help library staff work successfully with middle schoolers, how to build partnerships that build opportunities for success. Yeah, because we know that a lot of that now we need to be starting to kind of really target our kids in 8th grade, right, to help them for future academic success, particularly college success. So, okay, we have thrown a lot at you, just absolutely a lot of information, and we appreciate you sticking it out with us through all of this. Now, we want to go ahead and give you time to, during the session, fill out the 2 evaluation surveys, because we do really need you to fill that out as a part of our IMLS funding for this project. So if you could go ahead and Kristen is about to drop the survey, in the chat window. If you will go ahead and click on that right now and fill it out, and just take a little bit of time to work through the brief questions. They're mostly like fill in the bubble type things. And there's a couple of more open-ended questions. And then the second one is a geographic survey. And that helps YALSA understand where their reach is. And what that helps them do is just kind of see a better range of where they need to put more trainings, or where they need to kind of recruit more people in different libraries and everything. And it also helps them be able to report to their funders, IMLS and Congress, to let them know, hey, in your home state, like this many people have gone through this training, or we've been able to use this money to reach X number of folks. So definitely please do take some time right now, and especially that first survey, fill that out. Also, I know the survey can be a little tricky to say what city did this training occur in. You can put virtual if you want, or you can put your own city. I kind of just thought about how some of the survey questions are a little more difficult. Information. And now you can take a quick screenshot if you want, or, my favorite method of collecting info now is just taking a picture with my phone. So now I have, thousands of photos that are unorganized. But this is our contact information, and we are happy to talk to you anytime. Just give us a shout out, email, phone, whatever. Particularly if you're interested in bringing more of these topics to your library or your library system, or if you just want to be a part of future trainings, maybe like the online modules that we're going to offer on some of the other aspects of these trainings. Now, I do want to say, like, these trainings that we're going to be offering are free. You're not going to have to have any registration fees, which is also a great sell for your administration. And because this is grant funded through IMLS, YALSA is making these available to everyone in the participating states. And so also, just kind of watch out for your listservs, ODL, listserv, OLA, email blasts, and things like that. Because we'll definitely put out a call for people to enroll in the classes whenever they're available. And like Kristen mentioned, the contact info is also available in the conference session portal, and the slides and handouts are available in the session portal as well. So you don't have to worry about saving those links that were dropped in the chat. You can go ahead and download those from the session portal that you clicked through to get into the pre-conference. So hopefully you guys have gotten most of the way through the surveys. We'll keep the window open for a little while longer, of course, in case you have any more things you want to drop in the chat. But mostly, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today and participating with us. And also, thank you for really sharing, personal things about yourself as a teen and about your own experiences. I know sometimes that can feel kind of vulnerable, especially just over the internet in audio form with a bunch of strangers. So I really appreciate your willingness to participate and share your experiences. That really makes this session work. So it was very important and critical to us kind of building a lot of important dialogue and conversation. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Adrienne and Leah, for putting on that wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. Thank you, everyone else, for attending and participating. I just wanted to once again mention the endowment baskets. If you have an opportunity to check out, the link is in the conference. I think I should also have a link I can put in the chat, but go ahead and set up an account and bid on those baskets, except apparently the fantasy basket, which is somewhat spoken for. All right.
Don't be coming for my fantasy basket. You are right.
The link in the chat here. So you can create an account to put bids on there and set it up so you get text messages if you get outbid, and that's closing at Friday at 2 o'clock. And of course, all that money goes towards scholarships for OLA. And I hope that you will join us tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for the keynote and participate in the rest of the conference. Oh.
Absolutely. And there's another teen session that is happening Friday morning where we're going to talk about a lot of program ideas and places where you can get a lot of concrete info on how to keep up with teen trends. And that's called From Fortnite to Big Mood. Yes, we did name it a while ago. Keeping up with teen trends. So there's another session plug. But there's so much good content in the conference portal, you guys. A lot of pre-recorded content, a lot of synchronous content. So there is just a ton out there for this year's OLA.
And just remember that the conference sessions are going to be recorded. So, you know, if you do have something come up, you can go back and view them. And of course, the pre-recorded sessions that were just mentioned as well are available. And I believe they're going to be available for 6 months after the conference. So you have plenty of time to look at all that wonderful content.
For sure. So if you, in a month, are like, hey, there was a really good handout. Where did I put that? Just log back in and grab it. Well, I think we can probably go ahead and